I have watched you. I have watched you say yes when every fiber of your being screamed no. I have watched you extend yourself beyond breaking. Smile while you bleed. Give until you're hollow and call it love. Call it kindness. Call it being a good person. But I, who have spent my life cutting through comfortable lies to reach uncomfortable truths, must tell you something that will disturb the foundation of how you've built your identity. Your kindness is cowardice. Your generosity is self-abandonment. You give because you cannot bear the guilt of refusal, and so you bleed yourself dry in service of others' comfort while your own life withers like a plant kept in darkness. You are not noble. You are not selfless. You are terrified, terrified of disappointing, terrified of being seen as selfish, terrified of that moment when someone's face falls because you chose yourself instead of them. And so you betray yourself 1,000 times a day in 1,000 small accommodations until you no longer recognize the stranger staring back from your mirror. Tell me, when was the last time you said no without immediately drowning in guilt? When was the last time you chose your own needs without a chorus of apologies? When was the last time you felt like a person rather than a resource to be consumed? You have become a well that gives to every traveler, and no one notices when wells run dry. But I have come to teach you the most heretical truth of all. The word no is not cruelty. It is the foundation of sovereignty. It is the first word of freedom. It is how you become real. Let me tell you about the well. In the desert, there was a well deep and pure, fed by underground springs that had flowed for centuries. Travelers came from all directions, drawn by rumors of its sweetness, its generosity, its unfailing abundance. And the well gave to every traveler, every caravan, every stranger who arrived with empty vessels. It gave without question, without limit, without rest. The travelers praised the well. They called it blessed. How fortunate we are, they said, to have found such a generous well. It asks nothing. It judges no one. It simply gives, and the well, hearing this praise, believed it had found its purpose. This is what it meant to be good, to give endlessly, to ask nothing in return, to exist solely as a resource for others' needs. But wells are not infinite. The underground springs that fed it began to falter. The water table dropped. Each day, the well had to reach deeper into itself to find something to give. The water, once crystal clear, began to carry sediment, the well literally giving pieces of itself because it had nothing else left. Still, the travelers came. Still, they drank. And still, the well gave, even as it felt itself emptying, even as it began to understand that it was dying. And here is the cruelest part. When the well finally ran dry, when it had given everything, including its own life, the travelers simply moved on. They found another well. They didn't mourn. They didn't remember. They didn't even notice the exact moment when the well stopped flowing, because to them, the well was never a being. It was a function, a resource, a thing that existed to serve their needs. This is you. You have spent your life training yourself to ignore your own depletion. You have become expert at reading every room for what others need, while remaining illiterate to your own exhaustion. You have developed a sophisticated radar for others' discomfort, while your own discomfort has become such constant background noise that you no longer even hear it. Someone asks for your time? Yes. Your energy? Yes. Your emotional labor? Yes. Your resources? Yes. A piece of your soul? Yes. The last drop of whatever you had reserved for yourself? Yes. 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 Because to say no would be to admit that you matter too, that you have limits, that you are not an infinite resource, but a finite being who can be depleted. And that admission that you are not inexhaustible feels like a moral failure. So you give until you're empty, and then you give more. You give the structural integrity of your own boundaries. You give the time you needed for rest. You give the space you needed to hear your own thoughts. You give away so much of yourself that you lose the ability to recognize yourself at all. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the exhaustion and the resentment you're not allowed to acknowledge, you wait. You wait for someone to notice how much you're giving. You wait for someone to say, stop, rest. You've done enough. You wait for someone to give to you with even a fraction of the intensity you give to them. But they don't notice. They just keep drinking from the well because you never taught them that the well could run dry. You never showed them your limits. You never said no. Here is what you don't want to hear. Your generosity is not love. It is a transaction. You give in order to be needed. You sacrifice in order to be valued. You exhaust yourself in service of others because somewhere along the way, you learned that your worth was conditional, that you had to earn your right to exist through usefulness, through service, through the endless provision of what others wanted. You learned that love is something you purchase through self-abandonment, and now you're angry. Not at them. You would never allow yourself to be angry at them. You're angry at yourself for feeling angry. You're guilty for being resentful. You're exhausted from pretending you're not exhausted. You have built a prison out of yes, and you've decorated it so beautifully with the language of love and service that you've convinced yourself it's a temple. But I can see the bars. I can see how each yes narrows your world a little more. I can see how your life has become a map of everyone else's needs, with a blank space where you should be. Tell me, who are you when you're not being useful? What do you want when no one's asking anything from you? What would you choose if choice didn't come wrapped in guilt? You don't know. You've forgotten. You've spent so long being a mirror for others' needs that you've lost the ability to recognize your own reflection. And here's the truth that will sound like blasphemy. The word no is holy. It is the first boundary, the first sovereignty, the first declaration that you are not merely a function, but a being with limits, with needs, with the right to exist as something other than a resource. When you say no, you are not being cruel. You are being honest. You are saying, I am finite. I am real. I have edges. And those edges are not a moral failing. They are the shape of my humanity. But you have been taught that boundaries are selfishness, that limits are moral weakness, that to say I cannot or I will not is to fail at the most fundamental task of being good. This is a lie. This lie has been fed to you by everyone who benefits from your yes, everyone who needs you boundaryless, everyone who requires you as an inexhaustible resource, everyone whose comfort depends on your self-betrayal. And you have internalized this lie so completely that you now enforce it against yourself more harshly than anyone else ever could. You have become the jailer of your own generosity, demanding more and more from yourself, punishing yourself for every moment when you choose your own needs over someone else's wants. But what if I told you that your yes means nothing, nothing at all, if your no is not real? The sacred no is the foundation of the sovereign self. When you learn to refuse without guilt, something miraculous happens. You discover what you truly choose. Your yes finally means something because your no is real. Think about it. If you say yes to everything, if you are incapable of refusal, then your yes is not a choice, it's a compulsion. It's a reflex. It's the automatic response of someone who has been trained to prioritize everyone else's comfort over their own existence. But when you can say no, truly say no, without drowning in guilt, without immediately backtracking with apologies and explanations, then your yes becomes powerful. It becomes meaningful. It becomes a genuine gift rather than a coerced payment. The people who truly love you don't need your boundaryless yes. They don't need you to deplete yourself to prove your worth. They would rather have your authentic, limited, real yes than your resentful, exhausted, compulsory yes. But you've surrounded yourself with people who are perfectly comfortable drinking from the well until it runs dry. People who've learned that if they just apply enough pressure, enough disappointment, enough subtle guilt, you will cave. You always cave. And why wouldn't they learn that? You taught them. I know what you're thinking. But Nietzsche, if I start saying no, people will be hurt. Yes, some might leave. And here is where we arrive at the hardest truth. Let them. Let the people who only valued you as a resource discover that you are not one. Let the people who only loved your yes discover that you contain no as well. Let the relationships built on your self-betrayal collapse so that new relationships, real ones, between sovereigns rather than between user and used, can be built. You are afraid of being alone. I understand. You have built your entire identity around being needed, being useful, being the one who never says no. The thought of people withdrawing their approval, their presence, their need for you, it feels like death. But what you don't realize is that you are already alone. You are alone inside your performance of endless availability. You are alone inside your prison of yes. You are alone because no one actually knows you. They only know the version of you that never refuses them. True connection requires boundaries. It requires two real people, not one person and one resource. It requires the risk that your no will be honored, your limits respected, your selfhood acknowledged. And if saying no cost you relationships, then you never had relationships. You had arrangements. You had transactions. You had people who were perfectly happy to consume you as long as you never insisted on being seen as something other than consumable. Here is what becomes possible when you learn the sacred no. You discover your own shape. You discover that you are not formless, not endlessly malleable, not required to contort yourself into whatever shape the moment demands. You have edges. You have limits. You have a specific geography of capacity and incapacity. And this is not a deficiency. This is your humanity. When you can say no, you can finally figure out what you actually want, not what you should want, not what would make you look good, not what would make others comfortable. What you, that specific, particular, irreplaceable you, actually desires. Your life stops being a response to everyone else's demands and becomes an expression of your own will, your own values, your own carefully considered choices about how to spend the finite resource of your days. You stop feeling invisible because you stop making yourself invisible. You stop feeling drained because you stop allowing yourself to be drained. You stop feeling resentful because you stop betraying yourself and then pretending it's virtue. and your relationships transform. The users fall away good riddance. What remains are people who can handle your wholeness, who respect your limits, who value your yes precisely because they know your no is real. These are the people worth keeping. These are the relationships worth building. Not the ones that require your self-abandonment, but the ones that celebrate your sovereignty. So let me teach you the practice of no. Start small. Start with a request that don't matter much, the colleague asking you to cover their shift when you had plans, the friend asking you to listen to their problems when you're already exhausted, the invitation you don't want to accept but feel you should. Say no. Just no. Not no, but. Not no because. Not no, I'm so sorry. I feel terrible. Maybe next time. Please don't be mad. Just no. And then, this is crucial, sit with the guilt. Feel it rise up like a tide. Feel the voice that says you're being selfish, that you should have said yes, that you're failing at being a good person. Feel all of it and don't act on it. Don't send the apologetic follow-up text. Don't backtrack. Don't try to explain yourself into absolution. Just sit with the discomfort until you realize you're still alive. The world hasn't ended. The guilt is just a feeling, not a moral truth. It's the death rattle of your old conditioning, screaming against its extinction. Do this enough times, and the guilt gets quieter. The no gets easier. Your yes becomes more intentional. Your life becomes your own again. And here is what you'll discover on the other side of this transformation. You'll discover that most people barely noticed your yes in the first place. They took it for granted because you taught them to. Your exhaustive giving didn't make them love you more, it made them respect you less, even if they'd never admit it. But when you say no, when you establish boundaries, when you refuse to be endlessly available, something shifts. People start to take you seriously. Your yes becomes valuable because it's no longer automatic. Your time becomes precious because it's no longer freely given to anyone who asks. You become real. You become dimensional. You become someone rather than something. And paradoxically, your capacity to genuinely help others increases because you're no longer giving from depletion, from resentment, from the hollow space where yourself used to be. You're giving from overflow, from choice, from genuine care, rather than from the terror of being seen as selfish. This is the difference between self-sacrifice and self-betrayal. Self-sacrifice is a conscious choice to give something meaningful for something you value more. Self-betrayal is the compulsive abandonment of yourself to avoid guilt or gain approval. One creates meaning. The other creates resentment. You who have spent your life saying, yes, hear me, the well runs dry, and no one notices when it dies. But you can choose differently. You can learn that your limits are not moral failures, but the boundaries that make you real. You can practice the sacred no until it becomes as natural as breathing. You can build a life where your yes means something because your no is genuine. This will feel like heresy. Every person who benefited from your boundaryless giving will call it selfishness. Every voice inside you that learned to prioritize others' comfort over your own existence will scream in protest. Good. Let them scream. Let them protest. Let them discover that you contain depths they cannot drain, boundaries they cannot cross, sovereignty they cannot violate. You are not here to be consumed. You are here to become. And becoming requires the courage to disappoint, to refuse, to choose yourself, even when it costs you the approval of those who never really saw you anyway. So I ask you now, as I have asked myself, would you choose this life again? This life of endless yes, of exhausted giving, of feeling invisible in your own existence? If you had to live it infinitely, eternally, exactly as it is, would you choose it? If the answer is no, then you know what must change. You must learn the word that creates sovereignty. You must practice the refusal that makes your acceptance meaningful. You must become the guardian of your own life rather than the servant of everyone else's needs. Or you can stay as you are. Keep saying yes. Keep giving until you're empty. Keep betraying yourself and calling it virtue. Keep waiting for someone to notice how much you sacrifice, how much you give, how good you are. Keep being the well, giving to every traveler until you run dry. And when you do, when you finally have nothing left to give, they will move on. They will find another well. And your sacrifice will mean nothing except the life you didn't live, the self you didn't become, the sovereignty you traded for their temporary approval. The choice is yours. But know this: I have shown you another way. I have given you permission for the heretical no. I have revealed that your kindness, untempered by boundaries, is not love, but slow suicide. If you remain boundaryless now, it is not because you must, it is because you choose to. And that I leave to your conscience, to your courage, to your will to finally, after all this time, choose yourself. The well that learns to say no does not run dry. It deepens. It purifies. It learns to give from abundance rather than from depletion. And when travelers come to drink, they taste not just water, but the dignity of limits, the respect of boundaries, the truth that real generosity requires sovereignty and real love requires the courage to disappoint. Now go, practice your no, discover your yes, become sovereign,